A wealthy client demanded that the mechanic be fired. Weeks later, she begged him to fix her car. The Mexico City sun filtered through the dusty windows of the Hermanos Vasquez garage, located on a busy corner in the Roma Norte neighborhood. The morning air mixed the aroma of coffee from a neighboring diner with the distinct smell of motor oil and gasoline. Ramon Vasquez, 42, was under the hood of a 2010 Subaru, his expert hands navigating wires and components with the precision of a surgeon. "Hey, Ramon!" his younger brother, Eduardo, shouted from the other side of the shop. "The lady with the BMW is here. She says she's in a hurry." Ramon sighed deeply, wiping his hands on his navy blue overalls, which were embroidered with his name in gold thread. He had worked at that shop for 25 years, since he was 17, and his father had taught him that one honest mechanic was worth more than 100 salesmen with nice words. The family business had survived economic crises, changes in government, and the arrival of modern, high-tech repair shops. The woman waiting next to the gleaming white BMW X5 contrasted dramatically with the atmosphere in the shop. Victoria Mendoza de Salinas, 55, was wearing a cream-colored business suit that probably cost more than Raymond's monthly salary. Her high-heeled shoes clicked impatiently on the oil-stained concrete as she constantly checked her gold Rolex. "Are you the mechanic?" she asked in a tone that dripped with disdain, without even looking him directly in the eye. "Yes, ma'am, I'm Ramon Vasquez. Eduardo told me he's having trouble with his vehicle." Victoria wrinkled her nose when she noticed Raymond's greasy hands. "I hope you know what you're doing. This car is worth more than your entire workshop put together." Ramon maintained his professional composure, although he felt a knot in his stomach. He had heard similar comments before, but he could never get used to gratuitous humiliation. "Let me check what's wrong with you. I've been in this business for 25 years. 25 years here means nothing," Victoria replied, pointing contemptuously at the workshop. "In Los Lomas, we have BMW certified mechanics who studied in Germany." Eduardo, who had been listening from a distance, approached discreetly. He knew his brother well and knew that Ramon was making a superhuman effort to remain calm. The elder Vasquez had inherited his father's calm temperament, but also his unwavering pride. "Well, ma'am," Ramon replied in a firm but polite voice. "If you don't trust my work, perhaps you should take your car to one of those certified mechanics." Victoria looked at him in surprise. She was not used to being spoken to like that, especially by someone from a social class she considered inferior. "How dare you? I need you to check my car right now. I have an important appointment in Polanco and I have my dignity," Ramon replied, crossing his arms. "If you want my service, speak to me with respect. If not, the door is open." The silence lasted for several seconds. The other customers in the workshop, hardworking men who were waiting patiently with their more modest cars, watched the scene with a mixture of tension and admiration for Ramon. Victoria, accustomed to everyone paying attention to her money and social position, didn't know how to react. "Okay," she finally said, her tone softening slightly. "Check the car, but do it quickly." Over the next hour, Ramon diagnosed the problem, a fault in the fuel injection system that required a delicate repair. As he worked, Victoria kept making disparaging comments about the workshop, comparing it unfavorably to the luxury services she was used to. "How much longer?" he asked for the 10th time. "Ma'am, if you want the job done right, I need time. An engine doesn't understand quickly." Victoria huffed impatiently. This would already be ready at the Polanco dealership. Then go to the Polanco dealership, Ramon replied without looking up from the engine. The tension was palpable. Eduardo tried to intervene to ease the situation, but Ramon had 25 years of experience dealing with all types of customers and knew that some people only understood the language of firmness and determination. When he finally finished the repair, the BMW was running perfectly. Victoria reluctantly paid without thanking him for the work and left with a slam that made the windows of the workshop vibrate. Ramon watched the car drive away, never imagining that this encounter would change his life in unexpected ways. 3 days after the incident with Victoria, Ramon was adjusting the transmission of a van when he heard hurried footsteps approaching the workshop. Eduardo ran towards him with a distraught face, holding his cell phone. "Bro, we have a serious problem." Eduardo was panting, clearly agitated. It was Don Patricio Mendoza. He says we can no longer be the official workshop for his transport company. Ramon felt as if he had been punched in the stomach. The contract with Transportes Mendoza represented 60% of their monthly income. For 8 years they had kept the company's fleet of 40 vehicles, from cargo trucks to executive cars, impeccable. "Did he tell you why?" Ramon asked, although he had a terrible suspicion that he knew the answer. "He said that you had disrespected a member of his family and that he could not do business with someone so disrespectful." The bitter reality hit Ramon like an icy wave. Victoria Mendoza de Salinas was the wife of Patricio Mendoza, the owner of the transport company. Unknowingly, she had defended her dignity against the person who could destroy her business with a simple phone call. "What are we going to do?" Eduardo asked, his voice breaking. "Without that contract we can't pay the rent for the workshop or the boys' salaries." Ramon looked around the workshop that had been his life for 25 years. The tools inherited from his father hung neatly in their designated places. Family photos, including one of their father on the day they opened the business, decorated the oil-stained walls. The 3 employees who worked with them, Javier, Miguel and young Carlos, depended on the work to support their families. "Let's talk to Don Patricio," Ramon decided. "This must be a misunderstanding." The ride to the Transportes Mendoza offices in an industrial area of Azcapotzalco felt like a funeral march. Ramon had been to those offices dozens of times, always as a respected supplier. Now he felt like a criminal marching to his sentence. The receptionist, a young woman who had always treated them with kindness, avoided eye contact. "Don Patricio is in a very important meeting, he can't see them. Tell him it's Ramon Vasquez from the workshop. It's urgent." After a whispered phone call, the receptionist returned with an uncomfortable expression. "Don Patricio says there's nothing more to discuss. The decision has been made." Eduardo tried to intercede. "Miss, we've worked for 8 years without a single complaint. Our service has always been impeccable. I'm sorry, but the orders are clear. There's nothing I can do." On the way back to the workshop, Ramon drove in silence while Eduardo tried to find words to say. Consolation. The injustice of the situation ate at him from the inside. He had dedicated his life to being an honest mechanic, to treating all his customers with professional respect, to upholding the reputation his father had worked so hard to build. "Brother," Eduardo finally said, "perhaps we could talk to the lady, explain to her that it was a misunderstanding." "No," Ramon replied firmly. "I will not humiliate myself by begging for forgiveness to defend my dignity." That afternoon, Ramon gathered his employees in the workshop. Javier, the oldest after the brothers, had worked there for 12 years. Miguel had a young daughter with health problems that required expensive treatment. Carlos, barely 21 years old, had started as an apprentice and dreamed of opening his own workshop someday. Guys, Ramon began with a lump in his throat. I have to give you some bad news. We lost the contract with Transportes Mendoza. The silence that followed was devastating. The faces of his employees reflected the same concern that he felt. They knew that without that contract the workshop would not be able to survive more than 2 months. Quote, "What are we going to do, boss?" Miguel asked with a trembling voice. "We are going to look for new clients. We are going to work harder than ever and we are going to show that the Hermanos Vasquez workshop does not give up." But as he uttered those brave words, Ramon knew that the reality was much more complex. In a city like Mexico, where recommendations and personal relationships were essential to business success, the enmity of a powerful family like the Mendozas, it could be a commercial death sentence. That night, Ramon was left alone in the workshop, contemplating the legacy he could lose for defending his dignity. His father's tools seemed to reproach him from the walls and he wondered if he had made the right decision or if his pride had condemned his family and employees to ruin. The following weeks were the most difficult in the history of the Hermanos Vasquez workshop. Ramon and Eduardo worked from 5 in the morning until 10 at night, desperately looking for new clients who could compensate for the loss of the transport contract. Mendoza, the economic reality was unforgiving. Their income had dropped by 60% overnight. "Bro, we can no longer pay the boys their full salaries," Eduardo admitted one afternoon as he reviewed the numbers in his unbound notebook. His calculations showed a desperate situation. They barely had enough money to cover the rent for the workshop and buy the most basic parts. Ramon watched his employees working. Javier repaired a Versa with the same dedication as Mino Mington. Always, even though he knew his salary would be reduced. Miguel had arrived early that morning, before everyone else, to organize the tools and clean the shop without anyone asking him to. Carlos, the youngest, studied repair manuals during his lunch hour, determined to learn more so he could be more useful. "We're going to explain the situation to them," Ramon decided. "They deserve to know the truth." The meeting was painful, but necessary. Ramon explained that they would have to reduce salaries temporarily, that they couldn't guarantee how long the situation would last, but that they would do everything they could to get through it together. "Boss," Javier said in his hoarse voice from so many years breathing engine fumes. "We're not going to abandon you. You've always treated us like family." "Yes, Don Ramon," Miguel added. "When my little girl was sick, you lent me money without interest. Now it's your turn to support you." Carlos, shy and determined, added, "I can work overtime without additional pay. I want to learn more." Quote. The loyalty of his employees deeply moved Ramon. At that moment he understood that he had built something more than a business. He had created a work family based on mutual respect and shared dignity. Over the next few days they implemented a survival strategy. Ramon personally visited former clients, reminding them of the quality of his work. Eduardo was in charge of making flyers that they distributed in Mind and neighboring neighborhoods, offering home services for basic checkups. Employees reached out to family and friends, turning every casual conversation into a business opportunity. The response was slow but hopeful. Doña Carmen, who ran a taco stand on the corner, brought them her suru, which had not been maintained in years. Don Alberto, from the carpentry shop across the street, finally decided to fix his Ford pickup truck, which had been making strange noises for months. The butcher on the block recommended 3 clients who needed buttonhole work, but the financial pressure continued to be overwhelming. One morning, Ramon discovered that the owner of the store had left an eviction notice. They had 30 days to catch up with the rent or find a new place. "It can't be," Eduardo murmured as he read the document. "Don Fermin has always been understanding with us." Ramon decided to speak directly to the landlord. Don Fermin, Herrera was a 70-year-old man who had inherited several commercial premises in the area. He had always maintained a cordial relationship with the tenants, especially with the workshop that had been there for 25 years. Don Fermin, Ramon began in the landlord's office. "I need to ask you for a favor. We are going through a difficult temporary situation." Don Fermin's face showed discomfort. "Ramon, you know that I appreciate you, but I received a very strange call. Last week an elegant woman told me that it was a bad idea to keep conflictive tenants, that it could cause me problems." Raymond's heart sank. Victoria Mendoza had not been satisfied with destroying his main source of income. Now she was trying to take away the place where he worked as well. "Don Fermin, I have been here for 25 years. I have always paid on time. My father opened this workshop with you." "I know, Ramon, but that woman mentioned that she had influence in the delegation's government. She talked about inspections, problems with permits. I'm too old to fight with powerful people." Ramon left that meeting feeling like the world was closing in on him. Not only had he lost his biggest client, but now he faced the possibility of losing the workshop that had been his life for 25 years. That night, as he walked through the streets of the Roma neighborhood, Ramon reflected on the consequences of defending his dignity. Had it been worth it? Had he been selfish to put his pride at the mercy of his family and employees? As he passed a church, he decided to go in. He wasn't particularly religious, but he needed a moment of peace to collect his thoughts. Sitting on a wooden bench, he looked at the candles that people had lit, each one representing a hope, a plea, a faith that things could get better. "My God," he murmured. "I don't know if I did the right thing, but I can't change who I am. If you take everything from me, at least let me keep my dignity." Unbeknownst to her, her troubles were about to take an unexpected turn. Several kilometers away, in a luxurious residence in Las Lomas, Victoria Mendoza de Salinas was facing her own crisis, one that would force her to reconsider her actions and prejudices. Victoria Mendoza de Salinas woke up that Saturday morning with the satisfaction of having put that impertinent mechanic in his place. From the window of her bedroom in Las Lomas, she looked out over the perfectly manicured garden of her residence, while her maid served her breakfast on a silver tray. Her BMW X5 gleamed in the entrance, freshly washed and waxed. Quote, "Ma'am," said Patricia, her trusted employee of 15 years. "Are you going out today?" "Yes, I have an appointment at the beauty salon and then I have lunch with the ladies of the club." "Pack my Hermes bag, the black one." Victoria had planned a perfect day, a facial, manicure, pedicure and then lunch at the most exclusive golf club in the city to discuss plans for the annual charity gala. Her life was spent in a bubble of privilege that she considered completely normal and deserved. As she got into her BMW, she turned the key and no, the engine wouldn't start. She tried again. The vehicle made a strange sound and then total silence. Victoria felt a stab of irritation. She had just had the car repaired 3 weeks ago. Patricia shouted from the car, "Call Patricio." Tell him the car isn't working. Patricio, her husband, was at the golf course with his business partners. When she received the call, he sighed with resignation. Call the BMW dealership to send a tow truck. The dealership said the towing service would take 3 hours due to the high demand on the weekend. Victoria, accustomed to having everything resolved immediately, felt outraged. Her social commitments were too important to wait. Ma'am, Patricia suggested timidly. What if you call a mechanic to come to the house? Victoria immediately remembered the impertinent mechanic from the Roma neighborhood. The mere idea of asking him for help made her nauseous. I've never walked before. But the hours passed and the BMW still wouldn't work. Victoria missed her appointment at the beauty salon and had to cancel lunch with her friends from the club. Her perfect day had turned into a nightmare of frustration. On Monday morning, she took the car to the BMW dealership on 12 Polanco. The diagnosis was devastating. The fuel injection system had completely failed, apparently due to a previous faulty repair. The cost of the repair was 120,000 pesos and it would take 2 weeks to get the parts directly from Germany. How is that possible? Victoria asked indignantly. This car has an extended warranty, ma'am, the service manager explained. The warranty does not cover damage caused by repairs performed outside the authorized network. We see that the vehicle had recently been serviced by an unauthorized repair shop. Victoria felt as if the world was shaking. The mechanic in Colonia Roma had sabotaged her car. It was the only logical explanation. Her mind, accustomed to blaming others for every inconvenience, could not accept that the problem could be a fault of the manufacturer. I'm going to sue that repair shop, she screamed. I'm going to destroy that mechanic. But her threats rang empty when the manager explained that he would need technical evidence of negligence, which would be costly and did not guarantee results. Furthermore, if the problem was a manufacturing defect, as the breakdown pattern seemed to indicate, she would be responsible for the legal costs. The following days were an ordeal for Victoria. Without her BMW, Delvio had to rely on taxis and private transport services, which deeply humiliated her. Her social circle began to notice her absence at important events. The veiled criticisms and malicious comments from her friends hurt her more than she was willing to admit. Where's your BMW? Sofia Castellanos asked during dinner at the club. You always show off your new car. Is it in service? Victoria replied, trying to maintain her composure. In service, right? German BMWs were perfect, Carmen de la Torre commented maliciously. Victoria excused herself from dinner early, feeling the humiliation of being the target of ridicule for the first time in years. That night, in front of her vanity mirror, she wondered why she felt so miserable over something as superficial as a car. On Wednesday morning, her world rocked even more. Patricio came home with a distraught face. Victoria, we need to talk, her husband said with uncharacteristic seriousness. Quote, I got a call from Don Fermin Herrera. He says you pressured him to vacate the mechanic shop. So what? That man disrespected me. Do you know who Ramon Vasquez is? Patricio asked with a smirk. He's the mechanic who's kept my fleet in tip-top shape for 8 years. Never a single failure, never a single problem. And you've been sabotaging him. Victoria felt a sinking feeling in her stomach. I didn't know that. I didn't know why you never take an interest in my business, Patricio interrupted. Now I have 40 vehicles with overdue maintenance. I've lost the best mechanic in town, and my wife is chasing an honest man on a whim. For the first time in their marriage, Victoria saw genuine disapproval in her husband's eyes. Patricio had always tolerated her whims and attitudes, but now he seemed genuinely disappointed in her. Quote, "What do you want me to do?" Victoria asked, feeling her world of certainties begin to crumble. "Fix the mess you created," Patricio replied, slamming the door out of the room. Victoria was left alone contemplating the consequences of her actions. Sumi felt upset. She had lost her husband's respect, and for the first time in her privileged life she had to face the possibility that she had been completely wrong. A week later, Victoria Mendoza de Salinas found herself in a desperate situation. Her BMW was still broken down at the agency, where she had been informed that the parts from Germany would be delayed another 10 days. Her relationship with her husband had become tense and cold. Patricio barely spoke to her, and when he did it was to remind her of the damage she had caused to his business. Quote, "Ma'am," Patricia said that morning, "an invitation arrived for the charity gala for the Children's Hospital. It's next Friday." Victoria looked at the elegant gold invitation. It was the most important social event of the year, where the city's most prominent families gathered to demonstrate their philanthropy. She had always arrived in her BMW, parking strategically where all the other ladies could admire her vehicle. "How am I going to get there?" Quote, she murmured, feeling for the first time the vulnerability of depending on something material for her self-esteem. That afternoon, while drinking tea on the terrace of her house, Victoria reflected on the last few weeks. Her perfect world had fallen apart due to a simple mechanical breakdown, but more than that, she had begun to question the foundations of her behavior. She had truly been treating people badly for all these years. On Friday morning, the day of the gala, Victoria woke up with a decision that surprised even herself. She dressed in casual clothes, something she hadn't done in years, and asked Patricia to prepare a taxi for her. "Where are you going, ma'am?" Patricia asked, surprised by the change in routine. "To the Roma neighborhood," Victoria replied, feeling butterflies in her stomach. The taxi ride through the city gave her time to think. She looked at the streets she normally saw from the window of her BMW, but now from a different perspective. She saw families walking together, street vendors working honestly, children playing in small parks, a world she had completely ignored from her bubble of privilege. When she arrived at the workshop, Hermanos Vasquez, Victoria almost regretted it. The place looked more run-down than on her first visit. The paint was peeling, there were fewer customers waiting, and the general atmosphere was one of economic struggle. Eduardo was the first to see her. His eyes widened in surprise and a touch of alarm. "Ma'am, what do you need?" "I need to talk to Ramon," Victoria said, her voice softer than she had in years. "Ramon." Eduardo glanced toward the back of the workshop where his brother was working on an old car. "Are you sure?" Ramon looked up at the mention of his name. His expression hardened when he saw Victoria. He slowly wiped his hands on his overalls and walked toward her with his dignity intact, despite the difficult circumstances. "Mrs. Mendoza," he said in a neutral voice, "what brings you here?" Victoria felt the words catch in her throat. She had rehearsed a speech during the trip, but faced with Raymond's direct and honest gaze, all her prepared words seemed inadequate. "My BMU is broken," she began with a shaky voice. "The agency says you sabotaged it." Ramon sighed deeply. "Ma'am, I would never sabotage anyone's car. It's my reputation, my professional honor." "I know," Victoria admitted, surprising herself. "I know you didn't. The problem is, I need your help." The silence stretched on for several seconds. Eduardo, Javier, Miguel, and Carlos watched the scene with a mixture of curiosity and tension. They had never seen their boss in such an emotional situation. "My help?" Ramon asked with genuine surprise. "The BMW agency says I need parts from Germany, 120,000 pesos, 2 more weeks to wait." Victoria paused, taking a deep breath. "You fixed my car in an hour last time. I need your help." Ramon studied Victoria's face. For the first time, he saw neither arrogance nor contempt. He saw a human woman, vulnerable, genuinely asking for help. "Ma'am," he finally said, "are you asking me to look at your car after everything you've been through?" Victoria lowered her gaze. "I know I have no right to ask you for anything. I know I ruined your business, that I pressured Don Fermin to evict you, that I behaved like a horrible person." The words came out like a torrent, as if a dam had broken inside her. "I didn't know you were my husband's mechanic. I didn't know you were an honest man with a family and employees who depend on you. All I saw was someone I thought was beneath me." Ramon felt something he hadn't expected. Compassion. "Why me? Why don't you find another mechanic?" "Because," Victoria looked him straight in the eyes. "Because I need it to be you. I need to apologize. I need to learn something." The employees at the shop exchanged looks of astonishment. They had never seen a woman from high society in Mexico demean herself like that. Ramon remained silent for several minutes, processing the situation. "Ma'am," he finally said, "bring your car here. I'll go check it out." Victoria felt such profound relief that she almost staggered. "Really, after everything I've done, my job is to fix cars," Ramon replied simply. "I'm not a judge of anyone." 2 hours later, Victoria returned with her BMW on a tow truck. Ramon began diagnosing the problem as she waited, no longer with impatience, but with genuine respect for the process. She watched him work, his precise movements, his total concentration, the way his employees respected and cooperated with him. "You know what?" he said to Eduardo as he waited. He had never really seen a mechanic at work. "My brother is the best in town," Eduardo replied proudly. "Our father taught us that an honest mechanic is just as important as a doctor." Victoria nodded, beginning to understand something she had never considered, that honest work, no matter what it was, had dignity and value. After 3 hours of meticulous work, Ramon finished the repair. The problem had been exactly what he had suspected all along. A manufacturing fault in the Mintazen's injection system that had worsened over time. Quote, "How much do I owe you?" Victoria asked. 3,000 pesos, Ramon replied. Victoria remembered the 120,000 pesos she had been quoted by the BMW dealership. Quote, "Are you sure? Only? Ma'am, I don't charge for what I don't do. I changed a part and readjusted the system. That's worth 3,000 pesos. As Victoria took the money out of her purse, she realized something extraordinary. Ramon had had the perfect opportunity to get revenge by charging her a fortune, but he had maintained his professional integrity. Quote, "Don Ramon," Victoria said, handing over an envelope that contained much more than 3,000 pesos. "This is for you and your employees for the inconvenience I caused you." Ramon opened the envelope and found 15,000 pesos. "Ma'am, this is too much." "It's not enough," Victoria replied sincerely. "It will never be enough to make up for what I did." Before leaving, Victoria addressed the employees of the workshop. "Javier, Miguel, Carlos, Eduardo, I want to apologize. You did not deserve to suffer because of my behavior." The men, uncomfortable with the situation but moved by the sincerity evident in Victoria's voice, nodded respectfully. "Don Ramon," Victoria finally said, "could you do me one more favor?" What? Could you teach me? I want to learn how a car works. I want to understand what you do. Ramon smiled for the first time since he had known her. Ma'am, it's never too late to learn something new. That night Victoria arrived home with her baby, working perfectly, but more importantly, with a completely new perspective on life. She told Patricio everything that had happened, including her public apology. Did you really do that? Patricio asked, surprised. Yes. And I'm going to do more. I'm going to reinstate the contract with the workshop. I'm going to talk to Don Fermin so that he withdraws the eviction threat, and I'm going to— Victoria paused, searching for the right words. I'm going to try to be a better person. Patricio hugged his wife for the first time in weeks. I'm proud of you, Victoria. For the first time in a long time, I'm truly proud. The following months marked a radical change in Victoria's life. She visited the workshop regularly, not to fix her car, but to learn. Ramon patiently taught her the basics of auto mechanics. More importantly, she learned to see people beyond their social class. The Hermanos Vasquez workshop not only regained its economic stability, but prospered more than ever. Victoria became its most enthusiastic customer, recommending it to all her friends at the club. The story spread through the city's social circles. The haughty lady, who had learned humility from an honest mechanic. A year later, at the grand opening of the workshop expansion, Victoria gave a speech that no one who knew her would have imagined possible. Ramon Vasquez taught me that respect cannot be bought with money, she said in front of an audience that included both socialites and workers. He taught me that dignity does not depend on what you have, but on how you treat others. He taught me that it is never too late to acknowledge your mistakes and change. After the event, as she watched Ramon celebrate with his family and employees, Victoria reflected on the path she had traveled. She had started as an arrogant woman who believed that money gave her the right to humiliate others. She had ended up as a person who understood that true wealth lay in human relationships based on mutual respect. What do you think about? Patricio asked her, approaching from behind. I think that sometimes you need your world to fall apart in order to build something better, Victoria replied with a genuine smile. That night, when Victoria arrived home in her perfectly maintained BMW, she paused for a moment before getting in. She looked at her luxurious residence, her perfect gardens, her expensive possessions. Everything remained the same, but she had changed completely. She had learned that true luxury was not owning a German car or living in the hills. True luxury was being able to look anyone in the eye with mutual respect, regardless of their occupation or social class. Ramon Vasquez, the humble mechanic from the Roma neighborhood, had taught her the most valuable lesson of her life, that human dignity is not negotiable, cannot be bought, and cannot be destroyed. It can be temporarily humiliated, but it always finds a way to shine through the actions of people with integrity. Upon entering her home, Victoria stopped in front of the hall mirror. The woman looking back at her had the same features, the same elegant clothes, the same expensive jewelry, but in her eyes there was something new, wisdom, humility, and the peace that comes from knowing that she had found her way back to her humanity. The Hermanos Vasquez workshop continued to thrive not only as a successful business, but as a symbol that dignity, honest work, and mutual respect always triumph over arrogance and prejudice. And Victoria Mendoza de Salinas became living proof that it is never too late to change, to grow and become the person they truly want to be. Yeah.